getting things done. I love getting things done. Well, actually, I like when things are done, not necessarily getting things done. But one of the things I think that's the biggest problem with today for leadership isn't just about getting things done. It's about getting things done with and through other individuals and involving them in the process. And that's where delegation comes in. And I know delegating can kind of be a scary word to use, especially for those of us like me who are control freaks and think that if something's going to get done right, well, then I'm going to do it. And I think that's probably, if that's the way you're doing things, you're definitely working a lot harder than you should be, and you might not be the best person to do it. So today, I welcome you to the Vision Leadership Podcast. I'm Ted McElroy, and let's dig into delegation.
Your eyes and your vision are under attack. Damaging blue light from the sun, your phone, your computer, your tablet, even light bulbs and car headlights is constantly bombarding you. The good news is our eyes actually already have a line of defense to counter the effects of blue light. This defense is made up of 3 pigments called carotenoids. MacuHealth with Micromicelle, the only supplement with the exclusive patent on all 3 macular carotenoids and Micromicelle technology.
In a previous episode, we talked about knowing what your number is. And just to recap what that was all about, it's the fact that you are probably costing your business some money because you are probably the most expensive thing in your business if you're the owner and the leader of your organization. Basically what it comes down to is there's a lot of stuff that you're doing that you probably shouldn't be doing. And in some episodes we got coming up, we're going to talk about how to figure out what kind of things to offload and how to get those on to other individuals that perhaps are going to love it a lot more than you do and probably do it a lot better than you do. But in order for them to get to a point where they can do it, we've got to figure out a way to get that across to people. You know, business has changed a lot over the last 5 years, probably more in the last 5 years than it did in the first 26 years for me. And I'm probably going to be able to say that over and over again as I continue to change my business. And the problem with change isn't change. People really do not have a problem with change. What they have a problem with is the transition to the change. And that's another thing I'd like to talk about in our future. And we'll dig into that, maybe even bring on someone who I think might be a little bit more of an expert at that than I am. But today, what we're really going to talk about is how to get stuff done and how to get a lot of stuff done, scaling yourself. Because if you look at the way old school, and I'm going to talk to our audience in a minute more about what it was like in the optometric practice. There's probably a fair amount of you listeners that are out there that are not in eye care, and that's okay. We welcome you. We're glad you're here. But when it comes to what old school eye care used to look like, I'm going to probably channel my dear friend and idol, Mike Rothschild, the great American, in what he talked about. And how eye exams were back in the day for his granddaddy, as he put it. He said, back in the old days, an exam room was a place to find out what people's prescription was and a place to put your cigarettes. Those were the days where basically you'd smoke in front of your patients. You'd have ashtrays for them. They would smoke, in the exam room. And he's got pictures of his grandfather, I think it was grandfather, maybe it was great-grandfather, just sitting in the exam room, smoking away, kind of relaxed. And I can remember a lot of my mentors, people like Dr. Craig from Milledgeville, Georgia, and that was kind of the way they practiced as well. The other thing that happened in that practice style is the office was pretty small. You had typically 2, maybe 3 people. One, of course, was the doctor. The doctor was there because they had to do the eye exams and pretty much, well, I'll get to that in just a moment. And then there was this other person, the receptionist, usually a lady, and her job was to greet the guest as they came in, to get their name, and have them have a seat. They would get a piece of paper that they'd write the name of the guest on the top of it. They would call the doctor up, and then the doctor would do literally everything else. I mean, they would do the VAs, they would do the chair skills, they would do the refraction, they would come up with a prescription. And then they would walk them out to the dispensary, not the optical. They would walk them out to the dispensary where they would go through frame selection with the guests or the patients or whatever you want to call them. They would do all the measurements, and then once that was done, if they were really industrious, they would actually make the glasses. They would literally edge all the lenses. They would take that frame that they had chosen. Maybe they'd order the lenses, take a couple weeks to get them in. They would get them all taken care of and put them together, and then the receptionist would call the patient to come back and pick up the glasses. Oh, there's one more thing that the receptionist did. She took all the money, because we're doctors. No, it's dirty. We don't talk about money or touch it. Oh, ugh. So that was the kind of the way things went. And because of that, there were probably some advantages to the way this looked. I mean, it was definitely a small office. You wouldn't need anything like I've got here, which is a little over 4,000 square feet for one doctor and 8 team members or 9 team members. Payroll was definitely lower. There weren't a whole lot of people to pay. I bet turnover was lower because, let's face it, there wasn't a lot of that infighting that happens when you get a lot of people around. There probably weren't a lot of internal issues also because there was a lot of infighting because there weren't a lot of people around. But you know what else happened? You didn't see a lot of people, because if you are doing all of that stuff in an eye examination, then odds are you probably don't have a lot of time to do all the stuff that needed to get done to a lot of people. You certainly weren't going to have a whole lot of walk-ins with emergencies, because if you barely could see 8 people a day if you were doing all that stuff. So the revenue was probably lower. Profit, I don't know. I could argue saying maybe the profit was a little bit better in some circumstances because they didn't have managed care plans digging into your pocket and things like that. But in order to do things, you kind of had to create a little magic. You had to be able to be a lot more people than one to pull this gag off. And as things started changing in our practices, there were more technologies brought in. There were more other extraneous things that kind of got in the way. Managed care came in and started, again, getting into our pockets. So we had to do things a little more efficiently and at a different way. And so that required us to get more people to teach them to do more things. And let's face it, most of us are kind of control freaks. I know I am. I'm a control freak. I want to make sure things are done a certain way. And we've all probably said this. If you want to really get something done right, you got to do it yourself. Well, that's wrong. I think another phrase, probably what we need to be thinking is, even if someone else, and this is reflecting back to the episode we did recently where we talked about knowing your number, even if someone else can do it 80% as well as you can, and they're doing it less expensively, they probably should be doing it, because they're probably going to do it faster. Over time, they're going to get better at it, especially if you are aligning those people into the things that really bring them joy. There's a lot of stuff that I do in the office that I really don't love doing, and I keep asking myself, why am I doing this? Because I know I don't like it. My team knows I don't like it, and I bet you my guests know I don't like it. But again, that's a later conversation for a later day. What we're going to talk about today really is how to delegate things in your office, different kind of, and not just the normal stuff, not just the chair skills. I'm talking about really higher level type kind of things that really shouldn't be requiring your time. The example I'm going to use is going to be something that happened annually in our office, and it turned out that I was always the one that kind of had to figure all this stuff out, and I'm not the best person to figure it out. So many years ago when I was going through the Business Accelerator program with Michael Hyatt. I know you guys have heard me talk about this a lot. This was a great thing I learned on delegating and how to get beyond what the delegation is. It's basically the levels of delegation and knowing what those levels are and what they basically stand for. And that made things so much easier for me when it got to the point of trying to get people to understand what needed to be done, how it could be done, and the best way to get it processed. So let's sort of get into this. Basically, when we typically think of delegating, we have this thing in our mind, this process or this task that we need to get done. And we pretty much think that if we just turn around and say like, hey, Allison's my operations administrator, I need you to get this thing done. Just take care of that for me, please. And that's kind of how we delegate. We just sort of tell people to do stuff. Well, the problem with that is it requires that they have to be able to read my mind, which, I mean, that should be pretty easy, right? I mean, I'm thinking it, and I know how it should look, so that should be enough, shouldn't it? Well, no, it's not, and that's the problem, because these rules of engagement that we have to have some level of delegation in place, so people are understanding what really needs to get done and the time frame that needs to get done and sort of how you go about doing it. So the process we're going to use today is going to be talking about these levels of delegation, and then we're going to talk about a tool that you can use potentially to help actually get this to happen. So let's talk about the levels of delegation. There's basically 4 levels of delegation. The first one is basically do it exactly as detailed. So let's talk about maybe like tonometry. If you were going to do tonometry on one of your guests, you don't just tell one of your team members, hey, I need you to go check pressures on this patient. No, especially if they've never done it before, because you don't want them to become somewhat artistic in the way they do pressures. Many of you may remember the Subway commercials many years ago they had where they had the sandwich artist. Now, try as they might, I promise you these people probably weren't quite as artistic as they were making them out to be. I mean, they had a set guideline. They didn't just decide they were going to put, 8 pounds of pepperoni on an Italian sub. They were told, you're going to put this much on there. You're going to put this much this and this much that. I mean, yeah, you can, maybe they want lettuce, maybe they want tomatoes, and maybe they don't want onions, but for the most part, you're going to follow this dialogue and keep it just like this. That's kind of really what we were wanting tonometry to look like. I mean, you don't want them taking pressure from the side of the eye. You want them taking it straight on. So what you're basically telling them, this is a level 1 delegation. I don't want you to veer off to the right or the left. I want you to do it exactly as I'm telling you to do that, because this process works. There's no need to create a different process. There's no reason to do something different. Do it exactly as I say. That's level 1. Level 2. Level 2 is, Allison, I've got this thing I need you to get done. I really have no idea what needs to be done in this circumstance. Would you please go and do some research and bring me back some options with the recommendation of the one that you think would work best? And we can talk about this, and then I'll have you carry that out. Think about this maybe kind of like you're adding a new frame line. Before you send off your optical department to go and spend these thousands and thousands of dollars, you want them to bring this recommendation back to you and say, we think this is the one, and here's why, and what do you think? And then you write the check, hit the credit card, do whatever it takes to get it paid, and move forward from there. But I'm not the right person to be choosing frames in my office. I'm just not. So I need to get someone who has a better fashion sense than me, someone who has spent more time talking with the representatives than I have, and also who is a frontline person. I mean, they kind of know what's going to sell. They're doing that. I am very seldom out in my optical. I'm spending all my time in this room back here behind me, or that one over there, or this one down here, or the one over there. I mean, that's where I do what I do best. But what I don't do really well is optical, and I know that. So I need to get someone who's really good at that to do that. And before I just let them have carte blanche to do whatever they want with the checkbook, I want to make sure that this is going right. So I'll have them bring in these options for approval, and then we'll go from there. That's a level 2. So level 1, do it exactly like I tell you. Level 2 is, hey, I need to get this thing done, and I'm not real sure how it needs to get done. Bring me what you think is the best idea of how to do this, and maybe a couple of others as well, so we can make sure we're on the right path. Hi, I want to talk to you for just a moment about a great lens that we are using in our practice. It is the Verilex XR design lens. And the reason we love it is because of what it's doing for our guests in our practice. Don't get me wrong. Verilex has been making great lenses for years, and I'm sure they're going to have one better than this eventually. But the Verilex XR design and the Verilex XR track are truly making lives better for my guests in my practice. When I'm talking to them about it in the practice, I basically say this. I say, there's a lot of progressive lenses that you've had where you've had a little bit of a challenge. You kind of got to figure out exactly where that reading spot, that sweet spot is on your lens. Well, with this lens, they figured out a way of how to put the in-between vision and the near vision in the same place. And the reason they do that is because they take into account a lot of specific measurements about you, including the fact that we've got this special computer. It's basically based on an iPad. I don't go into more of that, called an iRuler 2. That'll take more or less a 3D rendering of how your eye sits on that lens. What that does for you is keeps you from having to figure out where to look through that lens. And that's going to make you a lot more happy with your life. Not to mention the fact, can't you imagine what it's going to be like to go home and your eyes still feel good? And for those people who are dealing with a little bit more challenge, I also recommend doing the XR track. The reason I like this very much is because it's actually watching the way eyes move. Through using the iRuler program, they'll hold the iPad and they'll watch these dots go around, and it truly maps the way the eye moves. That comes up with a really good formulation of how they can perfect this lens and make the vision work better. So if you really want to know more about the Verilex XR lens line, please get with your Essilor account representative as soon as possible. Thank you.
On episode 102 of this podcast, Chris interviewed Justin Kwan, Michelle Andrews, and Richard Ruth. They pointed out that as a profession, we have done a great job of letting our patients know that myopia is not a big deal. If you can see 20/20, there is no worry. It is the high myopes that are in more danger. And as they said, that message is tragic. Any myopia has a higher risk of maculopathy, glaucoma, and earlier cataract development. In the MiSight one-day clinical trials, only 4% of study participants who got ProClear one-days stayed stable in their myopia progression over the 3-year period. That means you can confidently say, parent, by not going to a system geared to slow the myopia progression, there is a 96% chance your child's vision will get worse. This may take away some of the choice your child has in the future as to how they will correct their vision. Choice, not fear of the disease associations with myopia, is what best resonates with parents when it comes to myopia control for their children. And with CooperVision's MiSight One Day, we now have an FDA-approved single-use contact lens to lessen the progression of myopia in our patients. Contact your CooperVision representative to find out more about MiSight One Day contact lenses.
Then there's level 3. Level 3 is a little different, very similar to what level 2 was, but it's a little bit more trust, I guess you'd say, with your team member. It's something like this. I need you to do this thing. I have no idea how it needs to get done. I need you to go do some research, figure out what's going to do the best solution for this problem, and then do it and bring me back what happened. What was the end result of what you did? Think about this like maybe someone came in that was unhappy with their eyewear. They came to me and they told me, the person who has no idea how to deal with the eyewear situation. I mean, if it was something to do with their prescription, obviously that's my bailiwick. That's what I know what I'm doing. But when it comes to, I just don't like this frame, or, I think it looks weird. Maybe it does. Maybe it doesn't. I don't know. But for whatever reason, they don't like it. They're coming to me. They caught me at church, and they say, "Hey Ted, I got these glasses from you about a week ago, and they're just not comfortable, or they don't look good. My wife thought these really make me look stupid." And okay, I'll just leave it at that. You can let your mind run on there a little bit. But whatever it is, I'm not the expert. I'm not the person to take care of that. So at level 3, I'm saying to Rainey or Chelsea in my optical, could you take care of Jim here? He's got his glasses. He's not happy with it. Can you make him happy? And when you're done, I need you to tell me what happened. That way I'll know what we did, and hopefully we can keep this kind of problem from happening again, because that's really what you want, is to make sure that you've come up with a system that's going to keep this from being a problem moving forward. And the fourth, well, let's go back. The first one, again, do it exactly like I told you. Second one, again, is I need to get this thing done. I'm not sure how it's going to work. Do some research. I want you to figure out what the best idea is, but just bring me maybe 1 or 2 options just in case, to make sure that we're finding something that's really going to work. Option 3, level 3 is, I got this problem that needs to be dealt with. I'm not real sure what to do. I want you to figure out how to fix this problem, and then when it's finished, come back and tell me how it happened. Level 4, you probably are already ahead of me. Level 4 is, hey, I need you to get something taken care of. Can you just take care of that? I trust you. I know you got really good decision-making skills, and I know you know exactly what to do here. I have no idea how to take care of this. Or, it's really something that I think you're much better at than I am, or maybe it's something that, going back to the knowing your number, not saying this out loud, but I mean, it's a lot less expensive if you do this than if I'm doing this. But I just need you to get that taken care of. I don't have to have any kind of report about it at all. Just take care of it. That's kind of like someone coming in here and asking me a billing question about something. They want to know, why their insurance isn't paying for this particular thing, and I have no idea. This is probably a good Colette question. This is not something for me to handle, because Colette is our insurance specialist. She knows how to answer that question. I have no idea. Other than the first time we talked about the reason that this plan was better than the other, and this is why we should decide to be on this plan, after that, I kind of let them just handle that. So when it comes to that kind of question, it's a go back to the drawing board and say, hey, you know what? I think the best person for you to talk to here is Colette. And then telling Colette, Mrs. Johnson is having some challenge with her billing. She's not real sure why it got paid like this. I need you to take care of that for me. And you can just take care of it, because I know you can. So those are really the levels of delegation. That's the whole thing. And it's pretty simple. But it really comes into play when you're trying to get things done and scale this up. And we had a problem that occurred in our office about 2 years ago that came up, well, it had been coming up for years. Somewhere around May, it was time to get new uniforms. And every year, they would come to me and say, hey, Ted, we really need to get new uniforms, and we want you to select our uniforms for us. And we talked about my fashion sense. I mean, I think I'm okay at fashion, but it's not, I don't know how these uniforms fit. I don't know how they work well. I do know this: you're going to be wearing black. Black's a great color. It's uniform. Everybody's going to have black. It looks good with almost every color you can wear. So I like that. The only other color that looks good with everything is white, and that's going to get dirty in 2 seconds. So at least this black is going to work well for you. Now it's a matter of finding the right cut and the right material and the right pattern and the right company that does it. And oh my gosh, suddenly you've got a lot to think through. And let's be honest, that's probably not something you, as the business leader, need to be spending your time on. So, you need to have some sort of process of how to figure this out. Well, there were two tools that we brought into our office, both from, again, Michael Hyatt and company. The first one was something called a recommendation briefing form. So what I had my team do is I had them take this form, and I'll get this form put into a link so you can see it and understand. You can come back and listen to this later and make sure you understand how this process works. But basically what would happen with this form is it would spell out a number of things about how they viewed the problem, what they thought the problem was, also about what the cost would be, a timeline on how to fix this problem and how it could be best taken care of, and here's our recommendation of how to fix this. Now, the reason why I had my team go through this process is because if they can spell out all these details for me, it makes it a lot easier for me to come up to a decision to figure out how to do it. It also helps me a lot when it comes to deciding who's going to do it, because once this recommendation briefing form has been filled out, it's very likely that I'm not necessarily going to be the person that needs to take care of it. Or maybe I am. Maybe I am the one individual that needs to be doing this. And if that's the case, then I'm going to figure that out. But what I don't need for me to do is to go into fix-it mode, because that's what I'm going to do. My working genius is wonder and invention. And I make the most money for this practice in that room right there, or this room right here, or that room right there, or that room over there. Where I make the least amount of money is trying to figure out what uniforms need to be worn in the office. It is important that everybody looks the same in a certain aspect, that there's this uniformness. It also is important that when they leave the office, that they go up to pick their kids up from school, or they go to the grocery store, or they go to wherever, and Vision Source is emblazoned on their uniform. And people see that. And people think, oh, I need to get my eyes examined. Or, hey, what is Vision Source? I see this a lot around town. And in a small town, you get this chance to have that sort of thing. So those are the important things about why a uniform looks that way, but my team's not going to think through that. And they're going to come up with what their challenges are. And when they brought me this form, it had, let's try some different colors. We think it's important to do this because we want to look good, and we want to also make sure that this problem doesn't get pushed down the road like it does every single year, waiting on you to come up with a solution for this problem. So the next tool that I'm going to bring to you is something called a Vision Caster. Now, the Vision Caster is really important because it helps me detail the way I see the solution to this problem taking place. Now, I'm not figuring it all out, but it does have some frameworks of things that are important. One of those being that in this Vision Caster, it lets me restate the problem. It also lets me go from there to a point to where I am, let me get a little bit bigger so I can make sure I'm talking about this correctly. It talks about who is assigning this particular thing that needs to be done. And more often than not, if you're the leader and you're the one filling it out, you're the one that's assigning it. It also lets you assign this to someone. It has the date of when this was assigned. And then, most importantly, it has the level of delegation that this is going to be. It can be 1, do it exactly like I have detailed down here below. It could be 2, I need you to figure out this problem that I'm not sure how to take care of it, come up with your number 1 solution and a second and a third possibility that you can do, and we'll go from there. It could be level 3. We got this problem, I'm not real sure how to take care of it. I know you're going to make a great decision. What I want you to do is to go ahead and take care of it and then report back to me so we can know how this problem was fixed. That way it's not going to show up itself in the future. Level 4, I need this thing done. Can you just take care of it? That's all spelled out on this form, on the back of the form, so they know what they're looking at. The next thing that's detailed on this form is the reason why we want to do this, and then some steps, that maybe some frameworks that you want to have. What are some guidelines? It has to be black. I'm sorry, I know you want other colors, but it's going to have to be black because black looks great with everything. It's going to have to be the same brand for pretty much everybody, unless you guys can figure out a way to get all these blacks to kind of match. It definitely has to be at least the same brand for the top and the bottom for each individual person. The other thing is the budget. You can't just spend whatever money you think and just bring me a bill. That's not how it's going to work. In fact, we're going to give you a stipend that's going to be put into your payroll, that's going to be tax-free, and that's going to pay for your uniform. And then it's going to have some deadlines put in there. I need the report back as to how you think this process is going to work by X date. I need to know who you're going to order it from by this date. Let's say the uniforms need to be ordered by this date, and the delivery needs to take place by this date. So make sure you check with the vendor to make sure they can take care of it. And that's pretty much it. That's everything that you need to know that's on this Vision Caster. Now, why is all this so important? Because in the past, the way kind of things worked in my office is someone would come into my office with a problem. And they would say, let's pretend it's a monkey that's on their back. Hey, Ted, I've been carrying this monkey around on my back for 3 months now, and it's really getting kind of annoying and heavy. So here, I'm going to take this monkey, I'm going to put it on your desk, and now it's your problem. And they turn around and walk out. In fact, if you want to hear this a little bit better detail, Larry Savage, who I think I interviewed for this podcast 3 or 4 years ago, talked about this very problem. And it's something that's continually a problem of ours. So what this allows you to do is to make sure that when they leave your office, they take their monkey with them. So what they're doing is they're bringing in this recommendation briefing form, the problem that as they see it, they're leaving it with you. And for me, it keeps me from having to go into fix-it mode, because right now is not the best time for me to be trying to fix this. Right now, I'm trying to figure out what in the heck is going on with that retina in room 3, and I need to be doing some research about that right now. So that's kind of where that goes. It also gives them the opportunity to show you that they've put some sort of thought into this problem. How many times have you had someone just come to you with a problem and say, hey, I need you to take care of this? Because they know you're going to fix it. You do it all the time. That's kind of what you do. That's kind of what I do. So what this allows me to do is to have some time to go back and look at it and to really dig into what the problem is and figure out, is this really a problem? And is this a problem I need to be figuring out? Or is it something that someone else needs to be dealing with? More often than not, it's something that someone else needs to be taken care of. Once you get to the Vision Caster, it is you saying, here's what I see is the problem, and here's how I would like it to be taken care of. But what it's not saying is, I'm fixing the problem. It's saying, I trust you enough to do these things to fix this problem. And that's really what people want. People want to know you trust them enough to let them be part of the solution. And every time you say, I got it, or I'm going to do this, you're basically telling them they're not good enough to do this for you. And you don't trust them enough to take care of things. And that's kind of debilitating. People want to be recognized. People want to be seen. So when it comes to the time of delegating, and I hope this has been explanatory enough to where you do understand what we've been talking about for the last 30 minutes. And if it's not, please go into the comments or send me an email. My email is really simple. It is tmcelroy@visionsource.com. And just send me an email saying, I'd like to know a little bit more about this. And we can make sure that you get more information. But again, I'm going to make sure that these particular tools get put into today's discussion so you understand how these processes work. Again, it just comes down to the most important thing, though, is how to speak about the delegation. Level 1, do it exactly as you are told to do this, because this is the best way to do it. We've figured it all out. And if you've got a better solution, come and talk to me about it after you've done it this way. Level 2, I'm not real sure what needs to be done here, but I trust you to come up with a solution, to bring it to me as a recommendation, and maybe another recommendation just in case, that you think would work really well. And if there's only one solution, that's it. We'll talk about it and make sure it works. Level 3 delegation. That again is, I'm not real sure what to do here. We need to get this particular thing done, but I know you can handle it. I trust you to get this taken care of. I'm going to allow you to take care of this in the best way you know how. And when you've got it finished, regardless of what the outcome is, please come talk to me about it. So that way we know what happened, we know what we did, and we can hopefully head this off from being a problem in the future. And level 4, the one we all know and love, hey, I just need to get this done. Can you take care of that for me? Because I know you know the answer. I know you know the solution. Do you have any questions? Great. Just get that taken care of. I really appreciate the time you spent with me today. Hopefully you've learned something, and if you have, please leave it in a comment with whatever your podcaster of choice is. Also, please rate this program. This is the best way for people to find us, is by going through the ratings and seeing these particular things. And I'm not telling you to give us a five-star review. Just give us the one you think works best, and hopefully you're getting a lot out of these podcasts. Again, I've really enjoyed this time today. Thank you for being on the Vision and Leadership podcast with me today. And I'll see you next time. Thanks.